Hey YouTube, Mock Racer 4 back again with another locomotive review. I'm just gonna get all three of them done and out of the way real quick. And anyway, this is once again the Bachmann Standard Line HO Scale 280 with DCC UP 616. Now this one I picked up from Hobbytown USA in Oakdale for all was said and done about $80 because I had a coupon and some cash on hand. But anyway, this engine would normally retail for around $150, $160. They only wanted $119.99 for it. Not a bad deal, you know. But anyway, it's regular DCC on board. Now I won't show you the instruction manual for this because most of you probably already have one of these engines, whether it be a Spectrum Line 1 or a newer Standard Line 1, but the instruction manual, but the exploded parts view didn't really change. But anyway, it is again the 616 regular DCC on board. Now, like I said in one of my two previous videos, can't remember whether it was the Alco S4 one or the one before that, the kind of little update. This is essentially the older Spectrum Line tooling for the 280. Just moved down to the Spectrum Line, Standard Line, because according to Bachmann, Spectrum Line's level of detail has exceeded the standards set by the 280 back when Bachmann first introduced it to the Spectrum Line in 1998, I believe it was. It was either 1995 or 1998, one of the two. But anyway, the Spectrum Line has just exceeded that level of detail. Now, this ice block packaging is a little different from, say, the Alco S4 or the Tornado or the 57XX that I've all previously reviewed, as it opens across the side, split down the middle vertically, as opposed to kind of split with an open gap along the sides and flips, and the top flips up. Now, like I said earlier, it does already have the space for a speaker milled in the tender. Now this one I just have the regular stock DCC 8-pin DCC decoder that came in the locomotive installed in it right now. Now, some detail, it's got the little classification lights, headlight with light painted number boards in it with the cab number. And it's a 280, so it's got two-wheel pilot truck, then 8 drive wheels in the middle, and none at the back. And it's 616, as usual with a lot of the older Union Pacific steam engines like 280s. It's got the red painted window frames. And since they basically just reused the Spectrum Line tooling, it's got both of the little locomotive crew figures, engineer on the right, fireman on the left. If it were Britain and, say, Tornado or Flying Scotsman, it'd be engineer on the left, fireman on the right. The USRA, or what is referred to by Bachmann as the USRA medium length standard coal tender, not the Vanderbilt, but the standard. Now, coal is removable, but you also got to take and remove this little kind of coal bunker back plate here. So if you want to give it a real coal load, you'll have to somehow leave the coal back plate in place and just cut off the coal load, or take and make a custom one of these and set it down about here for the base of it. Then just dump in whatever you're going to use for the coal load. But I'm just deciding to leave it with the stock coal load, though I have contemplated using some sheet styrene to take and make a custom oil bunker for it, and maybe get a spare locomotive body shell and tender body shell and letter it up for a Great Northern engine. But I just haven't put it into action yet. Now, detail for the back of the tender, it's got the lettering for the Union Pacific subsidy, the Oregon-Washington Railroad and Navigation Company that owned this locomotive. So all the engines on that line would have been lettered for Union Pacific, but on the back of the tender they would have had this lettering here, the Oregon Water Railroad and Navigation. And then of course the locomotive number on the back there, along with a little ladder along the side. These have no backup light, unlike a lot of the other, unlike a lot of the other steamers in Bachmann's lineup nowadays that do in fact have the backup light. Now if you wanted one of these to have a backup light, you have really a couple options. Either fit one yourself using, say a spare headlight housing or a brass casting headlight housing and mounting it to the top of the tender deck, or set a little light bulb into the back here, relocate the 616 off to say the left side of the tender or the right side of the tender, put a headlight, a little hole for a headlight right there. But again, the easiest option would be to just mount a headlight to the back of the tender top right behind the water fill hatch. Or if you just so happen to have a spare Bachmann Vanderbilt tender laying around, you could use one of those, because those came with a little headlight already mounted to the top of the tender tank at the back. And Bachmann used to make those in Union Pacific, Baltimore and Ohio, Southern Pacific, and I'm pretty sure there was an unlettered one as well. But if you're lucky enough to either have one or find one, and you have one of these engines and you want to make it just that more realistic, then by all means, either get the tender if you found it in a local hobby shop or on the internet, or use it if you have one, and just make this engine look a little more realistic by swapping out the tender for the Vanderbilt tender. Now, sorry about that sudden moment of blur. That's my DS's camera focusing when I put my finger into the shot. But, again, it's the same tooling as a Spectrum Line 280. Now, I'll take and cut this one a little short and just say that I'll have a running review of this engine later. And in the running review, the running video, I'll also have maybe my older Rock Island one to kind of show you the running differences between the two, because I remember reading somewhere before they released, or rather when they released the Standard Line 280, that they added an idler gear. I've also heard they changed it to a 3-pole motor. Whichever one's true, it changed the running quality of the locomotive a little bit. So when I do the comparison with between my Rock Island 280, which is the Spectrum Line one, and this one, I will take and in there have running quality comparison between the two. Mock Racer 4, signing off.